This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the EDIC meeting for Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. We do have an agenda, we do have a quorum, which right now requires all of us. So thank you all very much for attending. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we get into new member possibilities. Did everyone have a chance to review the minutes from Cassie? Thank you very much, Cassie, for the minutes.
Of course.
Question? Mo, do you have the heat on in your house?
I do. But
okay, good.
We have a wood stove, and it's in the other room.
Oh.
And I'm in my office with the door closed, so
okay.
Now I must brave the elements.
You should set up next to the wood stove.
I should.
Any questions, additions, deletions to the minutes? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second? Thanks, Gwen. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I'm sorry, I lost track of who made the motion.
Mo made the motion and Gwen seconded.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks, Cassie. Public speak. Is there anyone out there in public land? Anyone out there, Gwen? No?
There's nobody here. There's nobody here.
Now all of a sudden we're getting the speaker. Okay. Planning department updates. I asked Jeff to attend the meeting, and he said he had nothing to do today, so he would join in. And I've asked if he could try to make a schedule available to meet with us like once a quarter and maybe give us an update on where we stand. I know it's nearly impossible for him to try to meet with us monthly, so if he could do it once a quarter. And you should have all received, if you hadn't seen it online, the 2023 year in review that he put together. I believe it was out on Facebook. So I asked him if he could just sort of give us the view through the windshield instead of the rearview mirror to just see what might be on the horizon for Easthampton in 2024. Jeff, it's all yours.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everybody. I have not been in a while, and I did explain to Tom that, the planning department was involved in shepherding the Tasty Top proposal through, and so that was a very time-consuming endeavor. And I lost the associate planner that we had for the permitting process during that hearing process. So we have hired someone to replace that person in there about a month in. So I've traded tasks of dealing with Tasty Top to training a new person. But I would agree to the quarterly. That's easy, and I appreciate that. And I do find the value of having the planning department come to the meeting. So I think eventually it could be more often than quarterly if we can continue that. As soon as my time, it was like, some of you may know that EDIC meets on the same night as the planning board typically. So that was the continuous conflict, is that the Tasty Top hearings were basically every other week for 12 months. So that was quite a long haul. So you probably heard that they approved that project. I'll start with that, just kind of looking forward. Kind of on private development is something that we can't usually predict it coming our way, but with Tasty Top, for informational purposes, they just received their Conservation Commission approval at like last week. They have 2 state permits that they need to get. One is an environmental permit, and one is going to be a permit through Mass DOT. So roughly, we would be anticipating nothing, like no shovel in the ground for that project for at least another probably 8 to 12 months. After which time they'll start to go through their development process, which is, phased over 8 to 10 years. So that's something that we will be able to continue to dialogue about. But I figured for your committee, might be useful to know that there's no shovel in the ground for quite some time still. We do have a potentially large housing project that will come through the permitting process sometime, I would say, in the next 4 months. That's a project at 385 Main Street. So that's a large vacant property as you're heading to Big Y. It's on the right side. It was in the housing production plan as suitable for housing, and they're talking about 90 units. You talked about it. Great. So that is going to be a permit that comes forward to the ZBA as a comprehensive permit. So that, would be something for this group to potentially be aware of and hopefully participating in, because I think the EDIC has talked about housing as an important component before. And like Tom said, I don't have my list looking ahead yet, so I'm kind of building it as we go. At the next quarter meeting, I will have something actually in writing as kind of like our forecast. But the two other projects that I want to mention that I think there has been some discussions of the climate action plan at this level. So there should be an opportunity coming up, I would say, in the next month or two for all boards and committees to see a draft of the plan, and especially the action items that are coming through that plan. And then the Energy Advisory Committee is sort of the facilitator of that project in this current form. And then there will be a presentation to City Council probably maybe in March, sort of a presentation of the final climate action plan for the city. And I think why I would belabor this is just that that's going to be a really important document for us. It's going to have a list of 25 action items that we can't all do at once, and no one group will do them all. So there's going to be some kind of discussion of priorities coming out of that, and then which committees are best suited to take on the tasks that are listed. And kind of related, about a year ago, there was another committee formed. It's actually the first committee that the city has formed in a while, but it's called the Bees Committee. And Gwen, I don't know if you guys had talked about that, but I forget what BEES stands for, but it is kind of similar to what it sounds like, BEES. It's kind of an ecological, sustainability-oriented committee that will have a pretty important role in the climate action plan. And then I think the EDIC will have a role, or projects will come down that are, within the EDIC's sort of wheelhouse. The Energy Advisory Committee will probably have some action items. The Conservation Commission might have a few and things like that. So I would say in the next month or so, the EDIC should be presented with information, and then you can have a meeting to talk it through. And the relationship that you have with the EAC, the Energy Advisory Committee, will be really good to have kind of stay intact. And then we have a bunch of grants, so we're always working on grants, and infrastructure is still one of the highest needs that the city has. So I think this group talked about the Ferry Street private development. So the buildings that are getting renovated on Ferry Street, there's a new affordable housing component to one of them, and the city is looking to support that project with some infrastructure grants. So that may be something that you will hear about and participate in the next year, in terms of how does the city help projects. It does seem like every project needs additional support to make them happen. So the Ferry Street affordable housing project will be one that pops up quick. It's the most shovel-ready project that the city has. And so that is also coincidentally about 90 units of affordable housing that will get built. And, they're slated for 2026 at the earliest for any kind of shovel in the ground over there. So Tom, that was kind of the best I could do to kind of give a quick forecast. I would like to reserve the right to kind of come back and give a more coherent list and make sure that the EDIC knows what's going on. There will be some business development sort of projects and continued economic development things. But those were the ones that jumped out at me to share with the group.
Jeff, I can't speak for all 5 of us, but I think you're welcome at these meetings anytime. So anyone objective, Jeff? I'm just kidding. Jeff, you're welcome anytime.
Okay.
So we're going to fire some questions at you possibly. Gwen, you want to go?
This is not a big question, just something that lit me up. I didn't get a chance to read the whole article, but I saw a headline in the Gazette that regional bike share might be coming back. We figured it out, maybe?
Yeah, I actually meant to read that article and I didn't. To see what it said, I don't know what it said. The Northampton is the lead community for all 7 other communities that have the bike share. And what has happened is there's a request for proposals out right now for operators to take over the system that we have, and we haven't been able to function it, for over a year now. That will be very informative when those proposals come back, because that will tell all the communities how much it would cost to operate the system. And that's been the biggest question mark, is how much, could it potentially cost for these communities to keep that system up and running. So yeah, I think everybody's kind of holding their breath and hoping that the cost is something that's reasonable for every community to start participating again. But that should be information that comes back out probably by February. So fingers are crossed on the Valley Bike Share.
Jeff, you mentioned those 20 or 25, I think you call them action steps for the climate action plan.
Yep.
Do you have an example of what some of those might be?
Oh, that's a good question.
Just 1 or 2, whatever.
Yeah. The list is going to get broken down into groups. So there'll be some things that are really things that the municipality, like the city of Easthampton, can do. And then it's kind of like, what can we do to support homeowners? And then what can we do to support businesses? That's going to be one major component of the plan. And then the other is, what can homeowners do on their own to do these things? And the goal of the climate action plan is to get, the city to net zero. I mean, that's kind of the state's overarching goal, is to reduce, emissions to zero over some period of time. So, one of them, and I think this group's talked about it, a lot of people have talked about it, but it's kind of going for this new building code. It's a stricter building code for energy efficiency purposes. So that is going to be on the list. What we haven't seen is, where does it fall on the priority? In terms of the priorities are, what actions can we take that make the most reduction in greenhouse gas emissions? And then, like for that one, for example, so adopting that additional building code, it's kind of a long process for the city to figure that out. So they're going to articulate some of the steps that are necessary for these actions. The other is going to be potentially whether we look at certain zoning regulations. We've had a lot of projects and a lot of discussion about tree removal and projects. And so that will probably be some kind of recommendation for the city to look at some of its zoning requirements or additional requirements for developments that will help us achieve that. And then the one last one I'll mention is sort of the one that the mayor likes to talk about the most in terms of what the city can do, is making our vehicles that the city owns vehicles and making them electric. So it's like electrifying the fleet. That is a pretty high priority for the city, because we have the potential ability to get funding to support that, and it's within our control. So it's the most direct thing we can do. It's cause and effect, where if over time the city can make all of its vehicles electric, then that will reduce those emissions by like a measurable amount. So Tom, those are kind of 3 kind of quick ways to explain it, but there are a lot of actions that we're going to need to collectively take over the next, you can run it out with 10, 15, 20 years.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Cassie?
You asked the exact question I was going to ask.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I guess when it comes to zoning, Jeff, or building requirements, I guess there's always a hope to strike a balance between what we need to protect the climate or improve the climate versus what it would cost a developer to build a project. The stretch code is already there, and we hear a bunch about that. And this is going to go above and beyond it. We've talked a little bit here about zoning, and I know it may be impossible to even put on your radar screen right now, but I would hope when the city looks at adding some zoning, we might have an opportunity to look at taking a broader view of the entire zoning regulation. We talked about when that person made the presentation on the housing production plan, she was overwhelmed by our zoning regulations and how many pages it was. And you've talked before about, the time and energy and money it might take to do that. But I hope that's on somebody's radar screen somewhere about taking a broad brush look at the city's entire zoning regulation.
Yeah, I think it is on the list, and I think it's the constant balancing, trying to make important fixes that could have results, desirable results quicker, versus taking, it would probably take like a year, and it would take a fair amount of money to just revamp the whole zoning code. And what we have never figured out is revamping it doesn't automatically get us the fixes that we might see as desirable. So we have to keep balancing that out, Tom, but it is on the list. It actually did jog my memory to remind the group that I'm aware of discussions of from at least one city councilor and the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership of trying to lay out a few more zoning amendments to continue to support more housing growth. I do know, I did want to mention that that's something that, the EDIC has been involved with in the past attempts, and they've all been successful. But one of the notions is that, and this group has talked about it, I think, before, is right now, zoning is based on how big a lot is in Easthampton, and before you can build a house on it. So I know that one of the amendments that people would like to move forward is to make the lot size requirement smaller, so that someone who has like a medium-sized property might be able to carve off a lot that would build, a house. Any kind of new house that we can get built is necessary. So kind of this small lot amendment. Tom, I think you've talked about your experience in like the Maple Street neighborhood, that the zoning used to require 50 feet of frontage.
Right.
And then a couple of houses got built, and then people were really upset for whatever reason, and they changed it back. So now it's like back to 100 feet of frontage. But that is a sort of a zoning amendment that we would probably want to see come forward, because it's smaller. It's going to create incremental new housing growth. Not, I think people were a little worried about the size of some of these other projects, but this would create sort of new houses, in a neighborhood, and it would be much more modest in terms of, potential impacts to neighbors and things like that. But that goes along with what you said about looking at the whole zoning ordinance. Is still on the list.
And then just a piece of information, Jeff, I'll share with the group while you're here, is that the Pleasant Street, the former Notre Dame Church property on Pleasant Street, is going to be actively marketed this year. It's about 8.5 acres. About half of that acreage goes down the bank towards the river. There's no value to that when it comes to construction, but there's value to it when you look at the percentage of density possibilities on the top. So, if the ordinance today says you can cover 80% of your property, all that land going down to the river counts in that 80% number. So you could potentially get pretty dense on top. But it's my understanding that the entire parcel, the entire 8.5 acres, would be available for sale. I don't know, at least we're hoping that a giant Colebrook sign doesn't go up in front of it. that it's marketed through their website and through their contacts. But I just wanted to give you and the group a heads up that that's happening as we speak. And you've always looked at that as some kind of corridor to the mills. Dave?
Where'd he go?
Oh, we left Dave. He must have clicked the wrong button. There you are, Dave.
Sorry, my microphone decided to quit on me. What property is this?
It's Notre Dame Church. When you turn onto Pleasant Street, it's right next to ESP Auto. There's a
Where
church
there's a children's
Yeah.
daycare now. Is that right,
Yep.
Tom?
That
Yeah.
property goes from ESP Auto all the way up to and behind one or two properties on Pleasant Street on the left. There's quite a big parcel there. It doesn't look that big because of all the buildings on it. But to a developer who might get outside the box, they might even, whether they can use the existing buildings or whether they remove them and put something up, I really don't know, but that's up to a potential developer. There you go. Thanks, Gwen. So to the left of this that's Notre Dame Rectory, but to the left of that is the church. But again, the whole parcel is about 8.5 acres. Oh, you could see it. I'm sorry, you could see it on the other map that Gwen's referring to right now. You see ESP Auto, and then you look at, if you drew a line to those buildings in the back, right there, that's the property line of the church, and it goes all the way down to right about where Gwen's cursor is now, way back here, past where it says Notre Dame Rectory, Gwen. And then it goes all the way down to the river. And in conversations with Jeff over the years, that he's looked, I think the city's looked at whatever might happen there could potentially be a corridor to the mills, to Pleasant Street and Ferry Street, making, obviously if it's housing, if it's business, whatever it might be, it could be a link to the rest of that area.
Yeah, that property, we include the city included that property in the housing production plan.
Right.
So there was an assessment done. I mean, it doesn't get huge numbers of units, but it is viable. And like Tom said, it's that connector piece between sort of Main Street and downtown and the mills. So I'm pretty sure that it's been looked at for, I think it's on the radar of the senior center folks and the library folks but the cost to acquire the property, and then the cost if the buildings were to be removed, like those are big costs for any project really. But Tom, that's good information.
Yeah, there's no doubt it's a challenging site. It's a challenging site because it's sort of long and narrow. And I know the senior center has looked at it as a possibility. Just so the group is aware too, the mayor just formed an ad hoc committee to look at the possibility of a new senior center somewhere in Easthampton. That's up to this ad hoc committee has a year to do their homework and then report back to the mayor, and then she'll form a formal building committee. We're looking at sites, we're looking at potential funding, looking at the needs of the seniors. I think they said within 5 years, maybe, if I have that right, something like 60% of the population of Easthampton could be over 55. So obviously we have to look at the long-term future needs of the seniors. One other couple of things, Jeff, real quick. One, it was interesting because the mayor brought this up at the first ad hoc building committee. And it made me think of it when you talked about certain priorities that she might have today on the climate action plan. As we all know, it's no secret, this is the mayor's last term, and she has until 2026, I believe, Jeff, if I'm not mistaken. I think, or 25. I think in the election of November of 25, we would be electing a new mayor.
I think that's correct.
So she's actually talked to this committee about getting this project to a point that a new mayor would have no choice, no turning back, so to speak. So I'm wondering if other boards and committees in town, like yours, Jeff, and like the Climate Action Plan, how do you preserve those priorities with a potential change in administration?
That's a
impossible question to answer, right?
I mean, the plan, like for the climate action, but I can speak to that. I mean, the climate action plan is a community-driven plan that we've been working on it for a year, and it's been very thorough. The consultant that we have is like really they're experts in this field, and then the participation, the document will get sent out to boards and committees, and then it'll get presented to city council. So that'll be kind of the main sort of thread through it all, is that, you know, we're keeping that entire plan public and through the public process. So it should be able to kind of be picked up by the next administration. And the priorities are not all data driven, but I mean, there's a pretty specific goal, which is to reduce the city's carbon footprint. So the priorities are, the goal was to try to base the priority actions on the most effective things that we can do. And then there will be some interaction where if you take one action, it actually has multiple benefits. So those might be the highest priority for the city to follow through. But I would be, I guess, remiss because I'm getting into we're doing the budget. The city is going through the budget. We're beginning the budget process now. But one of the key action items listed in the climate action plan is to hire a sustainability coordinator, or, you know, to actually have a person in city government whose job it is to facilitate all that stuff happening. Because I think that is where historically we have not done a good job of this. We come up with these really important plans and there's a lot of stuff to get done, and then no one gets hired to actually help do it. The example would be in the master plan, which was a 2008 document, said that the city should have an economic development person, and there's still no economic development person in city government. So kind of putting the money where the mouth is will be an important part. Like that could be something that the current mayor might have the ability to do.
Yeah. Or
that, you know, before there's another person in office who might have to learn everything and might not want to make a bold move, like hire someone to take on the sustainability efforts.
Last question for me, I promise. Do you think that the Main Street development will be as controversial as the Tasty Top one?
It doesn't seem like it. Gwen is agreeing. I mean, I think that they've taken a different approach to the project. So it's not inexpensive. It's a very expensive endeavor but they're preserving half the property as open space. So that's a unique element. The city is going to invest a lot of money of CPA dollars to support that project. They voted, it's going to go to city council actually. So I didn't see that, so the city council is going to be voting on giving them $600,000 from the CPA, the Community Preservation Act, to support the first phase of that project. And then there will be, I think there will be additional requests for CPA money to support that project. So the city will probably be investing, $1 million of CPA money to support that project. But it is very good and very unique. I don't know what the neighbor's reaction is. That's always an important part of these equations that we don't know until that project goes into permitting. But from the city side, it'll be well supported.
Nice. Gwen?
I think I can't know because I didn't ask whether they took any particular lessons from seeing how the Tasty Top experience happened, but they've been doing the tours of municipal committees and community organizations, just trying to understand what are people's concerns. Here's what we think is a good idea about this. And I think especially in light of the Tasty Top experience, it feels really different to be offering that kind of housing opportunity in that particular part of land. And so I think that You're right, Jeff. We don't yet know what neighbors' reactions will be, but it already feels really different.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, sorry, and I know you didn't ask, but I should say something about Union Street, just because I should say something about Union Street. So it's still, people are really still concerned, and people, no matter how, like, the efforts that have been gone into like trying to keep people abreast of what's going on, it's still not hitting a lot of people. So, I included in that year in review. It's not a planning project at this stage, but I like to share information. So all of the underground utilities are done. So that, like, by itself is a huge accomplishment. So new sewer, new water, gas lines have been relocated. And then there's been the drainage is sort of in place, and that's all done. I know, like, everyone says the road's really bumpy, but it's still paved. So the fact that we've been able to do all that underground and still have the pavement there and get us through this winter is really a pretty big deal that no one wants to no one wants to acknowledge that. But next construction season is going to be probably the most impactful. I mean, it's going to be, the road is going to be, fully removed and rebuilt. The sidewalks will be rebuilt. The curbs will be rebuilt. So it will be all in phases, but the next construction season will be, I think, probably pretty challenging for people. But then after that, by next fall is when they're talking about, being closer to done. If it goes into the next spring, it'll be for final details and things like that. But Mo's been involved on behalf of the chamber, and I do think no one wants to give the city any credit for that. They just want to, complain. But it is a pretty big milestone that it's I don't know the exact percentage done, so I shouldn't be quoted. There's a significant chunk of the work that's been done, and we're still in good shape.
Mo?
So I just wanted to say, and acknowledge the city's efforts, because from where I'm sitting, I think people are always going to be concerned, but it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought that it was going to be. Not by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that although folks, like I said, get concerned, and I think making the effort to get the information out has helped that. I haven't heard a lot, Jeff. So it makes me sad that you're getting.
I'm not getting a lot, and it's not personally towards me, but it is just the chatter out there. Like,
there's always that
perpetual.
I think
perpetual is always that, and it's bumpy, no doubt. But the conversations that I've had, it's like, yeah, it's not optimal, but when it's done, it's going to be incredible, and that's what I hear. So
yeah, I think the good news is when you hear the complaints on social media, there are always several people that come back to defend the process, as opposed to jump on the bandwagon and complain. Hey, look, they told us it was going to take this long. Hey, look, they've done the underground work. What do you want to do? Just repave the road and not do the underground work until later? So to me, that's the most positive thing I see, is people actually coming to the defense of the project when they see those complaints.
And the other thing, too, is that, the longer that we were able to go during this construction season, is where it's shorter on the back end, on the far end, right? So that's, I think, having conversations with people out and about, we're having that conversation too.
Yeah, that's good, and I'm glad. And I just wanted this committee, like, if you are in conversation, everyone encounters people out there, and I just wanted them to have a tidbit that, like, we've made it through a significant part of that project, and it's actually a successful project. So just having a little bit of that information at your disposal, I thought would be helpful.
And I also remind folks, the information is being circulated. You just need to get yourself into the loop, and this is how you can, right? And one of the comments was, well, I wish, and I asked somebody, a particular person, and that, did you sign up for, the newsletter or, to the city's website? Did you, do you do anything? No, I just want somebody else to do it for me. And you're not going to ever overcome that,
Yep.
But there's opportunities for people to get looped in.
Yeah, I think detours and things like that next construction season are things like we should really focus on and helping people know when there's a detour. That was one of the complaints that we heard of business Cottage Street business owners were kind of caught off guard a couple times. Not excessively, but there were a couple detours that I think popped up. Maybe they were expected, maybe they weren't, but they rerouted everyone down Adams for a while, and so there was that little pocket of Cottage Street which you really just couldn't get to. So things like that, and we can always do better. So that's just the goal, is to just continue to make sure we're doing as much communication as we can.
Sure.
Dave?
Yeah, I think when the construction was in that section, I know I called the police twice to get more people directing traffic, just because they did not handle that well on the traffic routing part, especially coming down from Holyoke into Easthampton, coming down Cottage and routing right onto Adams. Nobody was there waving them or stopping traffic, and that's usually a stop sign. So you almost had multiple accidents there. And I know I wasn't the only one that called the police to say, like, hey, you need someone there.
Right.
But I think that was a big complaint, was we didn't know those days were coming. And then it didn't seem like anyone was prepared to route traffic either.
Yeah, and I know, we say kudos to the city for their efforts, but, I had a chance one day to be one of those guys standing there looking into a hole, just because I always wanted to be one of those guys that just looks in a hole all day long. But there happened to be a Mass DOT inspector there that day. And he said to my friend and I that were standing there, he said, you would not believe the number of unmapped pipes we're finding in the ground from hundreds of years ago. And he said, you know how we find them? We break them because they're not supposed to be there. Yeah. So they're finding them, and they don't know if they're live or not. Whether it's water, sewer, so they're just repairing them as they go along. So that probably wasn't expected in the initial plan, that they were going to find all these pipes that weren't mapped out anywhere.
And so that was part of the Union Street project, or was that part of the
down in front of Easthampton Diner? They were digging huge holes there for a couple of days.
Oh, right.
And when you looked in the hole, Mo, it looked like this, of pipes. It just, and they had no idea if they were live or not.
Right.
And unfortunately, if they're not mapped, the backhoe finds them first.
Well, I'm wondering too, I guess my question was more around the closing of that section of Cottage Street. Was that part of the Union Street project, or was that part of the new building that's up?
It was part of Union Street.
Oh, okay.
Because they were doing the work.
Yeah.
Right. I think they were running a line for the pedestrian signaling or something. They had that whole intersection cut off. Okay. So it was going down Adams Street and Liberty.
Gotcha.
And when they're done complaining about the bumpy road, we're all going to be complaining about speeding, because it's going to be nice and smooth, and they'll be like they are on Holyoke Street now. Any other questions for Jeff? Jeff, I really appreciate you coming out on short notice and or staying home on short notice, whichever you did.
I was in my office for a while today. I came home, but thank you. No, and I apologize for not being able to come to meetings for the past couple of months. But
no worries.
This one coincidentally is off the normal planning board schedule, so I could make it work.
No worries. All right, thanks, Jeff.
Okay, I'm going to leave you guys to your business. Thank you very much, and I'll keep in touch, and I appreciate that. Actually, one quick question about the chairperson's role for the next period of time. We do have a process where we are sending a new project transmittal to Gwen. Do we want to change that to someone else for the time being, or is that necessary? Or I just figured I would ask. Wow.
Do you have the time, Gwen, to get them and still forward them, or?
Yeah, they're not so overwhelming that I can't forward them.
Okay.
I think I've gotten significantly better about that, where I forward them maybe even the day I get them.
Okay.
Not the hour, but the day.
Okay.
Appreciate that, Gwen.
Great. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Next few minutes on the agenda is any EDIC initiatives and goals you might be thinking of for 2024. One that just I think Jeff just dropped in our lap, and we won't know it till we see it. But what is our role going to be in that climate action plan? How many of those 20 or 25 items are going to be ours to try to initiate? And that, I think that's coming out in March, he said. So, we're going to wake up. We're going to wake up tomorrow morning. It's going to be March, and we're going to be able to take a look at those and how we as a small committee have the ability to implement those.
Actually, wait. The draft is going to come out next month. So we'll get a better idea of what our responsibilities will be.
Good. Yeah, it sounded like they were going to actually assign them to different groups in town. So we'll see what happens and what we can do with it with a 5-member organization. It doesn't mean we can't reach out to others for short-term help if we need it, but did anyone have anything? I had zoning in the back of my mind, but it sounds like there's not a lot we're going to do about that in the short term. It's going to take time and money like the housing plan did. It scares me when I hear Jeff say they want to add more amendments to the zoning book, which is already more pages than the U.S. Constitution, I think. So, if they're good changes and they add amendments to zoning, so be it. But I hope someday we can get a comprehensive review of that and cut it down to a manageable number of pages.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Tom. It's, to add is one thing, but, is there where can we trim?
Right.
Is another, and I would agree with you, but we're not really, obviously we're not going to know that, like you said, until we get that plan and start marching down that road. So,
yep.
On our radar, antenna.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Maybe we'll just settle in on those cap items and see what happens next month when we get those. And if I specifically, if I get my hands on that, or we might all get our hands on it, Gwen, you might actually get it in the project stuff that Jeff sends you. We can actually then pick it out and put it on the agenda for the next meeting on what assignments we might have.
If you want, the Energy Advisory Committee is meeting next Monday, and I don't know, the minute we get it, I could forward it to this group.
Sure, that would be great. As long as, Cassie, as long as they've assigned the roles to the various committees.
Yeah.
If we just see all 25 items, in a lump, we might not know what our responsibilities are going to be going forward.
It would be good to get a feeling for what kind of items are going to make it to the list.
Right. Any other thoughts about meeting day time?
Our last conversation, I left going, it's sort of not our business. On the one hand, I think you're right, Tom, that many other committees are having this issue with membership, and you are going to be able to meet the needs of some people and not meet the needs of other people with just about any day and time of the week. I don't know. It feels impossible to, there's no wand you can wave to magically make it more accessible to people.
If we had 5 members that wanted to join tomorrow and they said they would join, first of all, we only need 4. But if we had 4 members that wanted to join tomorrow and they said they would if we moved our meetings to 6 o'clock, we might consider it. But I don't see a long line of people ready to join, number one.
No.
So I'm not sure I've heard of the conflict. As I said at the last meeting, most people that might get involved already have a pile of meetings on their agenda, and a 4 o'clock meeting was attractive because it wasn't another night out. And I don't know, there's a day and time coming where we're going to be required to meet back in person. Respiratory illnesses have been on the rise again. So I'm not sure the governor's going to cut that off in March or April, whenever that was. I think it's going to be extended. The mayor seemed to think it was going to be extended to allow for remote meetings.
Do we know?
Hybrid.
I'm sorry, Tom. Do you know if that's going to be, if that's over in 2024? Because for some bizarre reason, it's in my brain that the governor extended it to 2025.
I think you're right, Mo. I checked that with Barbara Bombard a couple weeks ago, and she said it's March 2025.
Okay, so that's a plus, right? So we're, able to meet virtually 4:00. That's, does it work for everybody? No, but 6:00 is not going to work for everybody either.
Right, I agree.
That doesn't work for me, but
let's keep the time.
Yeah, and if we can, it's a nice option that we gift, I guess. It's not even an option at this point, but it's a gift that we can still continue to do this virtually at 4:00.
I'm going to see if I can find someone in management at Easthampton Savings to join. That's how I came on as an executive at the bank. So I'm hoping to bring someone on from there. Maybe Florence Bank too, I don't know. But one hurdle that we don't have to deal with, and we just found it out quite by accident on the Council on Aging board, they have a residency requirement, believe it or not, on the Council on Aging board. And we had a member who moved from Easthampton and built a new home in Westhampton and was required to leave the board. And that board does not have an abundance of members either. So
even though they're within our zip code?
Yeah, you have to live on the Council on Aging board. It's a requirement. You must live in Easthampton, believe it or not. So if Mike Superson wanted to join our board, he couldn't do it. Wouldn't you love to have Mike Superson on your board? Now, thankfully, we don't have that restriction. I got a list from Barbara, and EDIC, to what I can read, has no restrictions on membership. Obviously, we don't necessarily want someone who lives and works in Agawam joining our Economic Development Commission. I'd question their motives, I guess.
No, but if you're in the same zip code.
Yeah, doesn't work, unfortunately. But for us, there's no restriction, so that's why I'm going to go after. There was a person who was going to join the board, Council on Aging board, and now he can't because of where he lives. So I'm going to see if we can't get him on this board. And I'll reach out to some of my contacts at Florence Bank. That might be another, get a couple bankers, what the heck, can't hurt. And they would love a 4:00 meeting,
They would be the only ones.
In the summertime,
4, can I please?
in the summertime, it would affect their golf game maybe, but other than that.
Well,
And again, if anybody else can think of friends, contacts, enemies, somebody who you think would be good to join the board, that would be great. Reach out, please reach out. There is a form out there. I don't know if you have access to it that someone needs to fill out to get to the mayor. I believe right now we have 4 vacancies.
yes, we do.
So,
I can ask Paul St. Pierre if he's met anybody else or if any other names come to mind. Because he's now well ensconced in the entire region.
right. I don't know that, I don't know if Paul's aware of this or not, but he's one of the names that's been bantied about as a possible candidate for mayor in 25. I mean, think about it. Who's out there to run for mayor? I think Omar might, as president of the council, he might run, but it's going to be interesting. We have no clue today who our next mayor might be.
I feel like that's fine. I don't love a long election season.
I don't know. I like some certainty, Gwen. I don't want Donald Trump to lose the presidential election and decide to run for mayor in Easthampton. All right. Anything else? I don't care what time it is. We can adjourn anytime we'd like.
You're a terrorist, Tom Brown. Why?
Why?
I'm captioning our meeting with that. Last
Please don't. Anything else you would like to bring up or discuss, or would you like an early dismissal to go shovel some more snow?
We're waiting for the climate action plan to make any decisions about some, like the conversations we were having in July into the fall, right? About gas and energy and rental stuff and tax incentives, right? Okay, so good. Yeah,
Yes.
As long as that stays on an active back burner, I'm cool with that.
Yep. I think it was interesting to hear that there might be some citywide subsidies for homeowners or business owners to get more energy efficient. That was kind of interesting. It'd be interesting to hear what that is all about.
I also saw, I have become a person who is like slamming through headlines and not often getting into a lot of the story, but I have read a little bit about this, more than just the headline, that the state is thinking about rejiggering the mass save program because it's not doing all the things that it could be doing, that there are other programs in other states that work slightly differently, and it could be having a greater impact than the one it's having, especially if we are really with integrity trying to meet our original climate goals on the timeline we said we were going to meet them. So I'll be interested to see how that affects municipal planning as well.
Yeah, good point. Mo, I think you were muted when you said what you said, but I could read your lips.
I made a motion to adjourn.
When you were muted.
Right?
Is there a second to adjourn?
Seconded.
I was going to say, if there's not a second, we're here all night. Motion made, second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very, very much. Next meeting is February 20th. See you then.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.